Picture this. You have loved a series your entire life. You have endured its lowest points, and you've been there to witness its greatest achievements. But there was one game, film, book, or even an episode that you have never experienced. For the sake of this argument, we'll say this entry is very divisive. A bit of a black sheep, if you will. One that isn't remembered as fondly as some of the other classics. It seems to be a great divide of love versus hate for this nondescript media. You have been curious about giving it a shot, but you never really cared enough to spend the money. Then one day, you get access to it, experience it, and then you develop some strong opinions of your own. For me, this was Resident Evil 3 Nemesis on the PlayStation 1. If you've been watching this channel recently, you likely know Capcom has me wrapped around their grubby little fingies. I love Monster Hunter, new content coming soon, shameless plug, I swear. Lost Planet 2, also coming soon at some point, hopefully. Dragon's Dogma, also coming soon, hopefully. Devil May Cry, maybe I'll work on that one. And most especially, Resident Evil. I've never played Resident Evil 3 prior, as my dad only rented this one as a kid. He beat it in a weekend and returned it to Blockbuster. But actually, hold on a second, guys. Do you remember Blockbuster? I mean, what a time. I stole a copy of Kingdom Hearts 2 from a Blockbuster before. The memories. Anyways, that doesn't matter. I never did inherit Resident Evil 3 like I did with Resident Evils 1, 2, and Code Veronica. And since it's never been ported, and I've never had a PC up until recently that would enable any other means of acquiring it, I just never played Resident Evil 3. I've seen a lot of videos on it for sure, and I played the remake, but fantastic performances in Resident Evil 3 Remake, but the gameplay and level design was a huge step down from Resident Evil 2 Remake, which is one of my favorite games of all time, so I'm perhaps biased. If you like it too, you should probably go and check out my 100 subscriber special, just saying. Anyway, thank you. Great. My good friend and fellow gamer Tom has recently made it his goal to play all the Resident Evil entries from the classics to the remakes. So I scrolled through the PlayStation Store myself, and I noticed that they added not only the original Resident Evil 2, but also the original Resident Evil 3 for premium members, which I am. So I immediately downloaded them and wanted to join him on his journey for funsies. Well, I ended up being Leon's A scenario in 3 hours and 26 minutes without dying or saving once, and my god, if I didn't use first aid sprays, I probably could have gotten an A ranking. This would have been so much easier than the S Plus run. God, I'm so stupid. Anyways, I thought it'd be a really fun idea to experience Resident Evil 3 Nemesis simultaneously. Tom would be the novice Resident Evil player, and I would be the very experienced one. We each played on hard difficulty, and my initial goal was to fight Nemi every single opportunity that I could. That goal didn't last super long due to a complaint that I have later, but for now, I want to encourage anyone who is an RE fan and has not played this game to try it out. Resident Evil 3 feels like the kind of game that would come out today from a really passionate indie developer. It has brand new mechanics, some of which would actually even carry on throughout the series permanently, significantly faster gameplay, and the best pursuer enemy that I have ever seen in a video game. RE3 hides nothing in regards to its motivation, with a quick cutscene showing the beginning of the destruction of Raccoon City with, honestly, very good CGI graphics. There's so many zombie assets, moving parts, explosions, the effects, the expressions on people. I was genuinely shocked by the quality here. With the city getting torn apart, Jill narrowly avoids an explosion to get everything started, and we're in. Only needing to get past one zombie, Tom and I got acquainted with the new mechanics and the 2 journals the game provides. There are 3 new specific mechanics that I want to touch on here, and they shape the rest of the series moving forward. Listed in order of whatever I want, the first is the environmental hazards that can be utilized. Traditionally, you would hold the R1 button to aim and shoot. That remains to be the case here. However, given the lack of aiming abilities, they added the additional functionality of the R2 button specifically for destroying things like explosive barrels, which can be very effective at culling the herd. The second is the unique ammo crafting tool that starts in our inventory. This tool takes gunpowder that is found throughout the map and converts it into ammunition. The type of ammunition is dependent upon the combination of gunpowders A, B, and C, in a chart that, on a Thursday night at 11:30 p.m., I did not retain. My first combination created grenade launcher ammo, which I did not get for a very long time after. And lastly, my favorite mechanic conceptually that doesn't quite hit the mark in execution: the dodge/parry of the game. If you press either of the aim buttons or are already aiming, Press the fire button and you will either attempt to dodge the attack or push the enemy away. Notice how I said attempt to dodge. Well, Resident Evil 3 will do its best to try and evade the attack by backstepping, rolling, sidestepping, or ducking. Sometimes even doing this like cool roll animation where you end up on your, you're like crouched and you're aiming your gun. Anyways, the problem here is that there's no accommodation for your environment and no guarantee that it would actually even work. That and the same attack can invoke every type of dodge. So without having invincibility frames, you may try to dodge an attack and even succeed on the input side, but the game selects the wrong type of dodge, getting Jill pimp-slapped by Nemesis. In my opinion, this feature may be significantly better if you just had iframes. The inconsistent dodges are my biggest complaint about the game. Don't get it twisted though. I'm glad they're here and I wouldn't want them removed, just tweaked a little. Plus when they work, ooh yeah, that's nice. There's another major feature in the game and it's a big, bold subscribe button. Alright, you got me. It's live action choices. However, I won't go in too much into detail on those just yet, and I'll save that for later. For now, I want to get into the game feel and how Resident Evil 3 separates itself from Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2. Starting as a spin-off project, this game was originally going to be Hunk navigating and escaping a sinking tanker, which would have been pretty interesting to be fair. But when development for what is now RE4 went through a billion reworks and struggling with the PS2 hardware, Capcom decided to make this spin-off an entire mainline entry to cap off the PlayStation 1 era, adding Jill as the main character. It's this spin-off status that encouraged replayability, some randomness, and the other aforementioned ambitious changes to the gameplay. It's also why you might notice there are some things like spelling errors or translation errors that have occurred in the game, and why some of it feels a little formulaic at certain parts. Ah, yes, a well-maintained control room. There are times when you have to go and gather items, and each section of the game basically requires you have to get parts A, B, or A, B, and C, maybe even a D option, before you can then apply it to whatever puzzle or block that's ahead of you, and you use that to get by. But unlike the slower burn of Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2, on Resident Evil 2's case, I'm excluding the intro to running to the RPD, because there's a lot of enemies there, and that was a good example of, high-octane action. Anyway, Resident Evil 3 will have enemies everywhere all the time. And this time they mean business, specifically. Speed is the name of the game here. Jill runs at what feels like light speed compared to previous protagonists, and the enemies get a speed boost too. Not all of them, but many zombies took me by surprise when they started practically running at me in their own shambling and stumbling way, and they got in a quick grab in moments where I'm like, just move, please, move! Actually, hold on. You know what? One of my favorite little details here is when you're surrounded by zombies in the classic games, there are times when you can just get grabbed simultaneously without anything the player can do to avoid it, especially if zombies are on both sides, in front of you and behind you. The abundance of enemies in 3 would naturally lead to many interactions like this, right? Well, not exactly. After breaking away from a zombie grab, Jill will automatically shove all enemies away from her, unless they're on the ground, which I found out later, which gives you an opportunity to get the heck out of there. The best part about all this? She gets iframes, so they clearly have dodges with the capabilities of including iframes, they just don't use it for the dodges. I hate to keep harping on this, but it will make sense in the future, I promise you. What I would like to draw your attention to is the environment. For the first time and only time in the mainline entries, until recently at least, we can explore Raccoon City. Much of it is disheveled, and with all the chaos everywhere, we're relegated to taking little alleys to navigate all the destruction. We get to see what the city may have been like before everything went down, including seeing the park, seeing the theater from the outside, a pub, what the tram systems were like with cable cars and whatnot, and we even get to see some familiar sights like the RPD, fit with the classic music and all. And it's also visceral and immersive in a way. When backtracking through the city, enemies will take on different activities or will ambush you by leaping out of windows and scaring you only to then jump you and force you onto the back foot. There are so many times where you hear gunshots or screaming only to turn the corner and find that they've already been killed. There's also so many files that describe, from a first-person perspective, the tragedy of it all. A mercenary holding a little girl whose father just turned. The father not wanting to leave his late wife's final resting place chose to keep him and his daughter in this hellhole. You never find the father, but you can find the mercenary holding her. Both of them are lifeless. All of these accumulate to the reminder that you're not the hero here. You're not going to come in and save the day. It's too late. You just have to escape and survive. There is not a single character in the game that you can save, and it sucks. There's also bodies everywhere, but you know what? You'll see that in gameplay. Some more notable examples I want to mention are when the environment will jump and surprise you, only to not really be a threat at all. The door in a police car might suddenly sag as if something is going to jump out, but nothing happens. When you're in the arcade, a part of the building is on fire, and when walking up the stairs, the window of the door will shatter a little bit, which will likely startle you as Nemesis is likely pursuing you at this very moment. Then, not even 3 seconds later, the door will explode off its hinges, again startling you. But there's no danger whatsoever. This tricks you into thinking that you may actually be safe in this area, and the jump scares are kind of a red herring, so you let your guard down. You fight one zombie in the next room, and you get the key item. You turn to leave, and silently, Nemesis just walked right on up, and he's waiting for you right around the door, haymaker at the ready. This is not a slow burn survival horror. The sheer number of jump scares that are used in this game are staggering and legitimately got me quite a few times. But unlike something like Outlast or Five Nights at Freddy's, these jump scares don't end a sequence or railroad you into a specific result like failure. This all happens in natural gameplay and puts you in that fight or flight mode, which 99 times out of 100 you will always have the choice to do either, which is one of my best praises about the game as well. Between both Nemesis and regular enemy ambushes, the choice is up to the player if they want to just leave, fight through, run through, or any combination of avoidance and combat only when necessary to protect themselves. If you've played through Resident Evil 2, then you will be familiar with this type of design, but it happens more of a once-in-a-blue-moon type situation over there. It's far better paced here. You only really start seeing these jump scares after you've navigated through the first section of the game. Everything up until that point is pretty well telegraphed, but after you've made it to downtown, you generally have some weapons and maybe I've even taken down Nemesis once. Then, something crawls out of a window in the background and out of frame, completely silently. And then suddenly, you start getting blue herbs. Uh-oh. Upon returning to Uptown, zombies are bursting out of windows and cars. Enemies have repopulated and you're now feasting on the corpses that were previously slain. You can hear the screams of those just out of frame running and then succumbing to the sheer onslaught of the undead, turning the corner and to find that you were just too late. All of this demonstrates that killing enemies should be a last resort to keep yourself alive. But you gotta remember that you can't treat Resident Evil 3 like 1 or 2. If you aim to clean out an area to make it more accessible, then you're only doing so very temporarily. Since the city is being overrun with enemies, what better way is there to demonstrate that with sheer numbers? Which this game does not shy away from, my god. Enemies, again, I'm repeating myself, but these enemies are everywhere. Wherever you go, you will likely see some enemy type present. In fact, I'm pretty sure there's more zombie dogs in the starting area of Resident Evil 3 than the entirety of Resident Evil 1. At least there could be. In order to entice replayability, enemy type and placements are somewhat randomized in multiple rooms and corridors. As far as I'm aware, it seems to usually be broken down into one of two options, evenly distributed with a 50-50 ratio. This works perfectly with Tom and I progressing through the game at the same time, as one room will have a pack of dogs for me, and a horde of zombies for him. We each got unique challenges exclusive to our experience, which I think, again, is great for replayability. And even puzzle solutions and some weapon placements will be random every time. While this is a horrible nightmare for speedrunners, this is fantastic for replayability. It gives some more authenticity to each playthrough. Whether you get the Magnum or the grenade launcher first might completely change how you play the first sections of the game, or even whether or not you're prepared with enough ammunition to take down Nemesis. We'll get to Nemesis, I swear. We're saving the best for last. There are some downsides to the random values. It seems to me that the randomization is dependent upon initial entry of the area or room. Therefore, if you were like me, you can get the Magnum on your journey, die, go back a save, only to get the grenade launcher the next time you enter the room. In the instance that I created Magnum ammo with the expectation that I would get the Magnum, in this hypothetical not knowing about the random placements, I could screw myself over if the grenade launcher was what the game gave me. That, and when you parry a zombie, sometimes they'll land on their back, and then other times they'll just stumble backward. I could go on, but there are more examples. I just wanted to demonstrate that it is an imperfect system. Tons of random elements. Now let's talk about the name of the game. Literally. Nemesis is now one of my favorite video game villains of all time, and is also why he's my killer main on Dead by Daylight. I kind of liked him in the remake, but I don't know. His design was off. The teeth are too long and narrow. I mean, he's too long and narrow, less like a brick wall and more so has a lot of exaggerated elements. His armor/clothing is a bit more of like a black, like an all-black caution tape mummy vibe rather than the black leather, almost patchwork biker style of the clothing and gear that he has in the first game. And I don't know, I think I just prefer the classic rotten design. The new Nemi looks like his face was stretched far out as the virus parasite thing manipulated his bone and muscle tissue. That's the reason why I think it looks so wrinkled and the nose is still present, which I hate the nose, it's gross. You can also clearly see that the skin there is hanging on by a thread and is about to be torn if he just opens his mouth wide enough. I don't know, call me nostalgic, though screw you, I only played this game for the first time a week ago. But the classic Nemi has the benefit of being a zombie tank. You can see how the zombification took to this tyrant-adjacent creature. My questions are the staples on his head, though. Was that placed there for his appearance specifically? I wonder what the desire on the Umbrella researcher was that motivated him to do this very simplistic patchwork on the creature's face. I don't know, regardless of why, it looks so much better. Less over-designed. I know I took along in this tangential point, but the thing is, his design here in concept art and in-game is so intriguing and mesmerizing in its own grotesque way, and I feel like the remake kind of missed the mark on that. How Nemesis functions, on the other hand, now we're getting to the good stuff. Let's start with his introduction. At the beginning of the game, we have some time to accumulate some resources, acquire the shotgun, maybe fight, dodge, or succumb to some zombies, and also familiarize ourselves with the crafting mechanics that are brand new to this game. We navigate through Uptown and save Brad from a single zombie. What a chump. Of course, he's pessimistic and complaining that we're all gonna die, blah blah blah, there's no escape. I mean, why were you ever in Stars, you scum? Do you think I forgot about the Arclay Mountains? Fuck you, Brad. Fuck. Eventually, you get to the outside of the RPD, and that's where we first meet our speech-impeded pursuer. And what an intro it is, as this also introduces you to one of the new mechanics of a real-time binary decision. These choices will appear several times throughout the game, and they have the possibility to either vastly influence the rest of the run, or not really provide much of a difference at all. Here we can choose to fight our buff bad boy or run. I always choose to fight him because I'm no wuss. I survived the mansion. I fought a tyrant. I kicked his ass. What's one more? Oh my god, he's so fast! Nemesis is no joke in 3. He is highly aggressive, quick, damaging, and yet somehow, for the most part, he's pretty fair. Speaking strictly from design, every single one of his attacks has something the player can do to avoid it. In fact, I really only have one complaint about his fight as a whole, but I'll get there. Most of his attacks come from his less mutated arm, with a priority on his grab attack. Knowing this, one of the best things you can always do is run to his right-hand side. He does have a counter to this strategy with a really quick clothesline that is wide-reaching, but as long as you aren't too close to his physical torso, you should avoid this most of the time. The main benefit Nemi has over you comes down to dodge, RNG, and your environment. Yeah, here it is. All of his attacks you can dodge with proper timing. However, there will be many times where you dodge properly and with good timing, but due to the lack of iframes and specifically how Jill dodges, you could very well end up dodging into the attack and still getting hit. This inconsistency is why I recommend only attempting to dodge if you have to, or if he has got you cornered. The best way to not get hit is running like I said before. Here in this first basic form, he doesn't have anything too crazy besides his random bursts of speed, his grab, which is a guaranteed kill if below yellow caution, and his animation cancels. The biggest problem that Nemi has are those frustrational animation cancels of his. Nemesis can cancel his recovery animation if you get too far away from him during one of those attacks. Now I understand why this was done. He would certainly be more difficult to cheese with a bait out and dodge playstyle, but the problem is, it can really feel unfair at times. Especially when you nail the dodge time. If he's going for a grab and you dodge the attack, and that animation is a backstep or sidestep, it has a chance to prompt Nemesis to cancel the animation and perform a 0 to 100 sprinting attack Monster Hunter style while you are still stuck in that mid-dodge animation. It doesn't happen every time, but that inconsistency can really trip you up at times. I mean, I wish I could animation cancel. Stupid bastard. Either way, that's pretty much the only / primary complaint about Nemesis that I have, and part of that stems from the scuff dodge system, so the rest of Nemesis' abilities are fair, balanced, and terrifying. The best aspect here is that 90% of the time you always have a choice. You like that double entendre? It is rare that you are ever forced to fight Nemesis. And I'm not even talking about the black and white live action choices. In general, when he shows up, you can always just run. Just know, he can follow you into most rooms, and he is much faster than you. Speaking of running and his accessibility, in these few places where Nemi won't follow you, his music will still play, and you can still hear a muffled shout in anger waiting for you outside, or his very iconic stars. It helps keep up the feeling of pressure and makes you feel like he can enter at any moment. Then once you're out in the open or are progressing to another area, he pounces and catches you by surprise. As I mentioned before, my favorite aspect about Nemi is that you always have a choice of fight or flight, and they are almost always equal in terms of benefits. If you choose to fight, you are choosing the short-term challenge that exchanges a lot of ammo and some heals, none if you're good at the game, like I totally am, in exchange for ease of traversal and potentially really good upgraded weapons and healing items that make the rest of the game much more manageable. Now, the benefits of running from Nemesis are actually quite bountiful as well. You trade off the fact that most enemies will despawn in city environments and allow you to technically navigate from A to B slightly easier. How? Well, Nemesis is programmed in a way that even though he does run much faster than you, as long as you're actively running away from him, especially if you're going slightly left or right, he can never hit you. His running haymaker slows him down significantly and gives you ample room to run and evade naturally while you are traveling. This provides a smoother and easier traversal in terms of only having one threat to deal with rather than 10. It just so happens that this one threat is really scary. On top of all this, you can save a lot of ammo in the process. The biggest downside to this is that some of the puzzles the game won't allow you to work on, as there's no time for that. I'm not going to go too much farther in this video here, besides saying that this game probably has the best and most satisfying combat until Resident Evil 4, and I think that those like myself who have overlooked this game are severely missing out. As this video is more of a why you should play or a Resident Evil 3 showcase, I don't want to give out too much information as to take away from your initial experience, so I'm not doing a full analysis on everything too extensively here. What I will say is the best way to experience Resident Evil 3 is playing on hard mode. I have some personal bias, of course, as a longtime Resident Evil fan, but this is the best way to achieve the power fantasy of rising to the challenge. Hard mode starts you out just like any other Resident Evil game with just a pistol, a few bullets, and a dream. This early section is incredibly punishing, but once you get through the RPD is when you really start being able to hold your own. Starting on easy, however, will equip you with an assault rifle right off the bat and tons of weapons and ammo, and enemies go down in a slight breeze. As a means to balance this, Nemesis won't give you anything for defeating him, which in my opinion defeats the purpose a little. Hard mode makes you feel weak, only to then improve through skill, acquiring the weapons and ammo you need, and then wiping through everything later in the game, including Nemesis. Since I played Resident Evil 3 by fighting Nemesis every opportunity I got, the main limitation to this decision is that I forced myself into the hardest encounter in the game. Maybe one of the hardest in the series, in my opinion. I essentially discovered through many deaths that you gotta treat Nemesis like a Dark Souls boss. At least at this point. With only 2 heals and very limited ammo, I had to time out my shots with windows of opportunity to get a couple of shots off and then get ready to dodge again, as Nemesis requires 60 handgun bullets to be put down. This is a major battle of attrition, and at the halfway point, he will pretend to be dead, only to get up and become enraged. This prompts him to be much less patient in regards to movement, and he also will be far more likely to string his attacks and combos of probably max 3. I haven't seen him do more than 3, but most of the time, it's impossible to dodge all 3 attacks because of the dodging mechanic. And lastly, the big problem is that damn animation canceling. I cannot stand that mechanic. Here's what I learned. Even if you'd like to get every optional Nemesis drop upgrade, which in this game is 7 times, I recommend not fighting him here unless you do a specific corner cheese that's right outside the RPD that can potentially be used again elsewhere. It's not my favorite way to fight him as it kind of removes the stakes, but you know what, this early in the game with how hard this fight is, I don't blame you. Okay, the last point I would like to make about Nemesis is that I also really appreciate that he powers up alongside you. If you avoid him every time, he will have more maximum health in the later encounters. He also gets more abilities at a certain point, becoming significantly more dangerous to keep up with your ever-growing arsenal. This give and take to the rivalry is just beautiful. I haven't played a game like this in a very long time, and I highly recommend it. It is very hard though, so just keep that in mind. All in all, I strongly recommend you give this a shot if you have played a Resident Evil game before. If you haven't, I would say try another classic title first before this one. That way you can get familiar with the game mechanics and controls. Resident Evil 3 does not hold your hand, and I would not change that for the world. So I turn this back to you. Have you played Resident Evil 3? What are your thoughts? Would you consider that this is worth a shot in 2026, or should you stick to the remake? I know, right? I mean, who would prefer the remake over this one? It's bad, isn't it? That's what I remember about it. Actually, maybe I need to circle back on that issue. If you like this video, I encourage you to look at my 2-part 100 subscribers special, where I attempt to get an S+ ranking in Resident Evil 2 Remake from memory. It's got a lot of cuts, it's got a lot of edits, it's a lot of jokes, but it's pretty funny. Subscribe also if you want to see more stuff like this. I'm trying to branch out from just doing Let's Plays, although I do still really enjoy that, so I think I'm going to keep doing those for the time being. Anyway, see you in the next one.